everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. How is it going? This feels really weird. Happy Monday, but I'm here solo today. Lindsay and Ben are actually doing some moving today, so I am completely solo this week on Coffee Chat. So Coffee Chat by myself. Thank goodness I'm very comfortable talking to myself, so this should work out okay. And if you guys are here, say a little hello. Make me not feel quite so lonely. And I'm not even drinking coffee this morning. I'm literally just drinking water. So even more boring. But the exciting thing is I'm here talking about macros, which is absolutely one of my favorite things to talk about. So that is fantastic. And today I kind of wanted to talk just a little bit about how to make macros work for you. We hear and I see all the time people posting, what should my macros be, and how, what are macros and how do they work and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the basic macros information, but then I'm also going to kind of move a little bit into making them work for you. So if you're here, make sure you say hi. If you're watching on the replay, give me a hashtag replay. And yeah, so anyways, Coffee Chat on Monday with just Christina. So let's start. Let's dig right into macros right away. What are macros? So I don't know, maybe you've heard the term macros, maybe you haven't, and but we are going to tell you a little bit about exactly what they are. So in short, macronutrients are what make up the caloric intake, or the caloric content of food, sorry. So all food contains macros, and there are three categories of macros. So it's not just a generic thing, it's what makes up the calories in your food. I looked like I was crying. Oh no, Alyssa, I'm lonely. I miss Lindsay. So I was crying a little bit. The three categories of macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fats. So those are our three macronutrient categories. All food is made up of one, two, or three of those macronutrient categories. So every single thing that you consume has at least one, if not more, of those. Macros tell us that it's not only how many calories are in your food that matters, but it's actually the kind of calories that are in your food. So the quality of those calories, and it works differently for different people at different times of the day, different phases in your life, all kinds of things. So your macro balance may change. So if you think of it as, again, I hate using the pie chart example, but if you think of it like a pie chart, that this is your whole, and then it's divided into three categories. So every single food is going to be divided into three categories. Now, sometimes there will be very little or none even of one, but it's always going to have that division. So if you worry about just calories, you could get stuck with kind of crappy food, an unnourished body. You could feel like junk. But macro balancing actually helps you to up the nutritional value of your calories by keeping things in this proper balance. All right. Making sense so far? Everybody's following along? All right. It's kind of sciencey, and I'm not real sciencey, so I try to, slow it down a little bit for those of us who are real people. Why macros work? So if you've heard me talk about them before, and you're like rolling your eyes at me, and you're like, "Hi, Brittany," and you're like, "That's great, Christina, that this works." Hi, Lindsay. That you're like, if that's great that macros are this thing, but how do I know that it's going to work for me? So why macros work. So before we get into the how to do it part of it, let me just kind of tell you a little bit about why I believe that they work so well, and why research shows that they work so well, that balancing your macros is really the secret to long-term sustainable health and weight loss. So first of all, living on a diet and cutting healthy food groups doesn't work in the long term. Willpower is only going to take you so far. So basically, if you say, oh, I'm just going to limit my carbs, and that's fantastic, but if you could just limit your carbs and it was as simple as just doing that, you'd already be doing it. So our willpower just isn't as strong as sometimes we want it to be. So if you're going to try to do math, I know, Kim, right? If you're going to just try to do that, then often it's only going to take you so far. And honestly, most of us don't have that ironclad willpower, or we wouldn't have had weight loss surgery. We wouldn't be in this community, this bariatric community, if that's kind of was our thing, right? So don't rely on your willpower. Learn to nourish your body. And your body does need a balance of those healthy nutrients, of those macros to be healthy. And that means that we need protein, we need fats, and you betcha we even need carbs. We'll talk about why your body needs each one of those in a little while, but you do need to have good sources of each one of them in the correct balance for your body in order to be truly successful. So don't rely on that willpower alone. It's simply, for most of us, not going to be enough to get you to the finish line. So you need to rely on nourishing your body properly, and that's going to give you more long-term success. So willpower only takes you so far, but when you have a balanced diet, and I hate the word diet, but when you have a balanced plan that you're eating on, or a macro balanced plan, your cravings will actually subside like quite a bit. So if you're giving your body everything that it needs, you're less likely to be craving things, because usually a craving means that your body's not getting something that it needs. So if you're giving your body everything it needs in the correct balance, then you should have far less cravings. I know for a fact this has worked for me. I know it works for lots of other people too. But if you eat good healthy carbs, you tend to crave the junky carbs far less. If you tend to eat good healthy fats, you tend to crave the junky fats far less. So that really, really works. When your body has everything it needs in terms of your vitamins, your minerals, and your nutrients, you just won't crave things. It's that simple. It's mind-blowing, really, that it works this well. And I know that it works because when I fall off the wagon and I do eat the junky stuff, I crave more of the junky stuff. So when I have that good, healthy, balanced diet going, my cravings subside quite a bit. But then if I go off the wagon and I have some junk, then I crave more junk, and it's a perpetual cycle. Macros do also allow for the occasional guilt-free indulgence. If it fits in your calories and your macros, eat it. Guilt-free. So this means that you don't have to stop your life. That if it's, a birthday party, yesterday was Father's Day, maybe you celebrated, you don't have to have that guilt around things. You literally just build it in. One day last week, it was Lindsay's daughter's birthday, and she built in ice cream into her daily macro balance. That she was like, my daughter really wants to go to Dairy Queen. We're going to have blizzards. I'm going to get a mini one. How can I make this fit into my macro balance? So we figured out, now you can't do that every single day, or else you're cheating the system and you're cheating yourself. But you can have the occasional guilt-free indulgence, and you just make it fit into your world. So that's an amazing thing with macros, is that you don't have to stop your life. You don't have to live on this extreme restriction or anything like that, that you can actually just be able to live a real life balanced diet like a normal, healthy person, and not have to obsess about every little tiny thing that goes off plan, every little tiny indulgence that you may have. So you also tend to not get burnt out. You tend not to get as bored, and you tend not to binge, because nothing is off limits, that you don't have any specific food that you can never have again. Like I said, Lindsay built ice cream into her macros one day last week. I've built all kinds of crazy things into my macros over the last 4.5 years. Again, not every day, but occasionally. You guys probably, anyone that knows me knows I'm a bit of a Starbucks junkie. About once every couple of weeks, I build Starbucks into my macros. I know, what have I done to her, right, Alyssa? It's crazy. She's been balancing her macros for a month or more now. It's been amazing. But yeah, I find that if I can build those things in, I don't obsess about them. Now I know that I can just have Starbucks every once in a while, so I don't obsess about the things that I can't have. And often, at least for me, if somebody says, Christina, you can't do this, or you can't have this, I start to totally obsess about it, and then I just want it more, and I want it more, and I want it more, and then nothing else will do. And then when I finally do have it, instead of just having one Starbucks latte, then I want a Starbucks binge, and I'm drinking Starbucks every single day because somebody said I couldn't have it. So I find with macro balancing and being able to sort of fit anything in, then I just make it work. And if it's something that I really want, if I really wanted pizza for dinner on Friday night, then I would just build it in, and all week, I'd be like, I'm going to do this. That this is just something that I'm going to make it fit, and it's going to happen. And then I don't have to obsess about it. I don't have to try to find a replacement. And right, you can balance in those Dunkin' iced coffees you used to, which means you could do it again, Alyssa. If you did it once, you can do it again. So all of those things can fit in your plan. Again, they can't fit every day, but you can have the occasional guilt-free indulgence and make them work. All right. Macros will give you more energy. They'll give you better workouts and longer lasting results, because you really can live like this forever. I am living proof of this. For 4.5 years now, I have been living a macro balanced lifestyle. I don't track my macros every day anymore now that I'm in a maintenance phase, but I do still balance them on a regular basis to make them work, to know where I'm at. And if I do see a little creep up on the scale, I can get my macros back in check and take a look at them. And sometimes I look and I'm like, oh, that's why I've gained a little bit. My fat macro's out of control. Or, I've been doing this for a little while and I find that it's not working. Or, oh, my energy's really low. Oh, look, I haven't been eating enough carbs, enough healthy carbohydrates. So there's things like that I can still keep my macros balancing for me 4.5 years later, that it's something that I really do feel like I can live forever because I'm not super restricted and I'm just able to live in real life with this. All right. So we said that macros are what make up the caloric intake of food, or the caloric content of food, and that they're broken down into proteins, fats, and carbs, and that we need all of them. So now let's break those down a little bit further into why your body needs each of them, how many calories are in a gram of each, kind of how the math all works out. So we're going to get a little more mathy, which again, bear with me because I'm not a math girl, I'm not a science girl. So this is, a little much for me. So I do have notes because that will help me. So protein, an important component of every cell in your body. Protein is pivotal in making enzymes, hormones, and other body chemicals. It's an important building block of bones, muscles, cartilage, skin, and blood. It also helps you to repair and protect your tissues. Your body needs a pretty large amount of protein, especially while you're losing weight. That protein is really, really important in weight loss to protect a lot of those cells, to protect the density of your bones, to protect the muscle mass, to protect all of those things in your body. So your body does need quite a large amount of protein, hence it being a macronutrient, which means big nutrient. And the body doesn't store it, so you need to eat it regularly. So you need to keep replenishing your protein, that you can't just store protein and be like, well, I ate lots of protein 3 days ago, so I should be good for a while. No, your body doesn't actually store protein. So you need to consume it on a regular basis. Hold on. All right, how much protein is enough? This is something that's kind of heavily debated, but when it comes to macros, we have recommendations for how many, like the percentage. And I find using percentage instead of using grams is really helpful because all of you are at different calorie levels. You should not be at a generic calorie level. You should be at a calorie level that's healthy for you, your body, your journey, where you're at, all of those things. So what I'm eating for protein, how many grams I'm eating at, say, 1,700 calories versus how many grams of protein Lindsay's eating at 2,000 calories versus how many grams of protein Ben is eating at 3,000 plus calories versus how many grams of protein somebody else is eating at 1,200 calories is going to be very, very different. So if you do it based on percentage, then your percentage will be specific to you. So MyFitnessPal or Berrytastic will calculate your percent for you, or you can message me and I can help you do a math equation to be able to calculate your percentage as well. Again, math's not my big thing, but it's a pretty easy one, so even I can figure it out. The balanced protein macro for the generic average person is going to be 40% protein while you're in your loss phase. Again, it's pretty high. 40% is quite a high number because you're wanting to protect those bones, you're wanting to protect those muscles, your skin, your hair, all of those things. It's really important to have that protein macro fairly high. Now, you don't want it too high because then it can actually cause some issues with kidneys. It can cause some issues with your bowels. It isn't good if you have too much. So too much can be bad, but you want to have still a fairly high amount. So around 40% tends to be good for most people. Now, if you're living a vegetarian or a vegan life, that's going to be a little bit different. You might want to bring it down a little bit. If you're in maintenance, you can actually bring your protein down a little bit. So there's some things that are going to be specific. If you're living a keto lifestyle, you're going to bring your protein down a little bit and raise your fat up. So there are some specifics in there, but the average person who is in their weight loss journey, still in their weight loss phase, is going to be looking somewhere around a 40% protein macro. Another way that you can calculate your protein is 1 gram of protein, 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat is another way people, I've seen people calculate. I find that to be pretty high for a lot of people based on your guys' calorie levels, because you got to think if we're, in the beginning of our journey and we're in the 300-pound range, that's 300 grams of protein a day. That is a crazy amount of protein. That is pretty much going to be your 1,200 calories. So I find that way of calculating protein to be way too high for most people. I much prefer to stick with the 40% protein macro. Let's see what else I have to say here. Was there anything else but protein? No. All right, that's it for protein. So, the other thing I was going to say, I knew there was one more point. Varying your protein sources is also really, really important. So not getting all of your protein from whey protein, not getting all of your protein from chicken, not getting all of your protein from egg whites. So varying those protein sources. So I just gave you some ideas of protein. Cottage cheese is another great protein. Turkey, lean beef, lean porks. There are all kinds of different protein sources. Yes, too much protein does equal steel. You are right, Alyssa. So yeah, you want to vary those protein sources. And if you find one kind of protein is bothering you, then use a different one. I personally can't do any dairy anymore. So like cottage cheese doesn't work, any sort of like milk or cheese. I can't do whey proteins. I can't do casein proteins. So I've had to really vary my proteins. So I'm using more vegan proteins now, pea protein, hemp protein. What other things am I using? Chia, flax, beans, a lot of those kind of things. And then I do still eat meat as well, but a lot of the dairy proteins don't work. So there's lots and lots of options for proteins out there. Next, we're going to talk about why we need fats in our diet. So like proteins, we need a decent amount of healthy fats to be well nourished. Fats can help to build healthy cells. They provide energy. Fats also build your brain, literally. They are the pivotal part of the myelin, which is the insulating sheath that actually surrounds each nerve fiber. So fats are essential in metabolizing certain vitamins. They specifically help to metabolize vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Fats also make hormones. They improve your skin health. They protect your organs. So yes, we still need fats. Definitely need fats. Yeah, totally. I know, right, Alyssa? It's so much protein if you do it based on that. I see that calculation all the time though, which is why I wanted to talk about it. The suggested percentage of fats. So each gram of fat is actually worth more than double the calories of a gram of protein or a gram of carbohydrates. So that's often we see people with their fat macro really high and then their calories end up being really high. Each gram of fat is 9 calories per gram. Each gram of protein and carbs is only 4 calories per gram. So your calories can get really out of control really fast if you're living a high fat diet. High fat diets also aren't really great for a lot of your organs. They also don't promote as much lean muscle mass as unless you're living a keto lifestyle, and that is different. But you want to make sure that that protein is the highest macro. So your fat percentage should probably sit somewhere around 25%. This is the macro that I find most people struggle the most with, because a lot of the things that you think are protein sources end up being fat. I see a lot of people saying, well, I'm eating a lot of eggs, I'm eating a lot of almonds, I'm eating a lot of peanut butter, I'm eating a lot of cheese. Those are all very high fat and very moderate to low protein. So they don't actually have a ton of protein in them. They have a lot more fat in them. And that fat macro does get out of control pretty quickly. So your things that are good for fats are things like, salmon is a great fat. Coconut can be a really great fat. You can do like flax and chia have a fair bit of fat in them and they're really good. Nuts and seeds. Pumpkin seeds are really wonderful, that you can do all kinds of different nuts and seeds that are going to be good. Almonds are a great source of fat. And then of course you can do some of the animal fats in there, but try not to have your diet all animal fats if you don't want to live on bacon and cheese. Avocado is another really great fat. But again, varying those fat sources makes a big difference in the kinds of fats that your body's getting and how your body's going to use them. So trying to vary those fats as much as possible and not just staying all on those animal fats. Try to find some things that are grown as well as the things that are killed, basically. That's kind of how it works out. So try to make sure that you're not using all dairy and all meats as your as your fat sources. That make sure that you are using some plant-based sources for fats as well. I know I'm forgetting a few, but there's quite a few fats that you can use that are really, really good. So then the final macronutrient to discuss is often the most controversial one, especially in the bariatric world, and it's carbohydrates. So as you know, I'm never going to tell you to go against what your surgical team suggests, your dietitian suggests, but I will tell you why I believe that your body needs carbohydrates. So first, your brain needs carbohydrates. Your brain runs on glucose, and glucose comes from carbs. So if you don't have enough carbs, your ability to learn, think, and remember things will decrease because your neurotransmitters won't have enough glucose to synthesize properly. Easy for you to say, right? So you do need carbohydrates literally to run your brain operations. So if you feel foggy, if you feel exhausted, if you feel like you can't retain information, think about this for a second. Are you getting enough carbohydrates? Good, healthy carbs, is that something in your diet, or have you been severely restricting carbohydrates and now it's actually impairing your cognitive abilities? So that's not something that you want. That's all fine and great that you can be skinny, but if you're kind of brain dead at the same time, it's not really going to help you. So you want to make sure that you're fueling that brain with carbohydrates. Next, we talked about this a second ago, Alyssa said, but carbohydrates literally help you poop. They reduce bloat in your body. Good carbs contain fiber, which helps move things through you and eliminate waste more efficiently. So you really, really do need carbohydrates, especially those high fiber carbohydrates. They're gonna literally help clean you out. They're also gonna help release any of that waste, and they take other stuff with them as you're moving through. So it helps reduce bloat, it makes you feel better. Those good, healthy carbohydrates really, really make a difference. Carbs make you happy. So if you're ever feeling like you're just kind of grouchy, carbs contain tryptophan, which helps produce the feel-good hormone, which is serotonin. This hormone literally makes you happy. It also makes you sleep better. So if you're struggling, I often see this, that people have insomnia after surgery. And a lot of the time it's that low carb diet that we're put on right after surgery that actually causes some insomnia. So those are some things with carbs as well, that they help you sleep and they make you happy. So if you want some happiness, eat some carbs. And it doesn't have to be junky carbs. Fruit and vegetables literally contain loads and loads of carbohydrates. Same with beans. Carbs give you energy. Glucose is your body's #1 energy source, and you get it from carbohydrates. So if you're feeling super tired and run down, evaluate if you are consuming enough carbs. Good carbs are also loaded with vitamins. Yes, you can supplement, but our bodies really prefer to get our nutrients and our vitamins and minerals and stuff from food, and carbs provide lots of them. Think fruit and vegetables. Eating the rainbow, really, really important for your overall health. Before coming into the bariatric world, I have never, ever before heard of people saying that bananas make them fat, or that, you can't eat fruit ever again. That, to me, that just boggles my mind, as somebody with, a nutrition background, that I'm like, how can we even think this way? Fruits and vegetables are so good for you and contain so many good things. So trying to eat as many fruits and vegetables is really, really good for you. It's really healthy, and fruits and vegetables do not make you fat. They simply don't. It's just not true. So carbs have 4 calories per gram, as I said before, and a good rule of thumb for determining good carbs versus bad carbs is bad carbs are found in packages and boxes, good carbs are found in nature. So if you can find something in nature, maybe even not in its purest form, but like quinoa, for instance, good carb, fruits and vegetables, good carbs, beans and lentils, good carbs. So there's lots of different things that are good carbs that are found in nature. Bad carbs tend to be found in boxes. Now, of course, there's exceptions to that, like, whole grains and things like that sometimes you can find those in boxes. I eat Ezekiel bread. It's not a bad carb, but it is found in a package because you can't find bread on a tree. So there are some things, and pick and choose which ones feel right to you. But again, trying to vary your carb sources and eat different kinds of carbs, not just eating all bread, not just eating all fruit, not just eating all vegetables, but varying those carb sources and having a good variety is really, really important. The ideal balance for carbohydrates, you're looking around 35% carbohydrates for most people. Now, if you're trying to keep your sugar grams low and your fiber grams high, so that's kind of, just a good rule of thumb of what you want to do is keep the sugar low and the fiber high, and that's also going to show you that you're eating good quality carbs. We're almost done here. I only have a few more minutes. So what else was I going to talk about? Sorry, guys, I had something else about carbs, and now I've lost my train of thought. Revving up metabolism, good carbs in boxes, or good carbs in nature, bad carbs in boxes. So yeah, you want to make sure that, again, you're eating that good balance. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So 35% is the ideal for most people. Now, if you struggle with something like PCOS, diabetes, thyroid conditions, that is when you may want to have your carbs actually be lower and your fat higher. So for those specific people, and only those specific people, I usually suggest just swapping the carb and the fat macro. So then your fat would be at 35% and your carbs would be at 25%. Your protein is still at 40. So your protein should always be the highest, but only for those people that have those specific metabolic conditions that often those require a lower carb number. You can look at swapping those numbers. Now, with all of that said and all of that crazy macro information, and I encourage you to go back and watch this again because you missed things. I guarantee you missed things because I missed things. That you need to figure out what macro balance works for you. So you need to figure out not only what works in terms of, oh, I like eating this, because I see a lot of people saying, well, you know, it's really hard to get my fat macro down to 25%, so I'm just going to make it higher. Well, that's great if it works for your body. But if you find that you increase that fat macro and suddenly you're exhausted and you're not sleeping well and the scale's not doing the things that you want and all of those different things, then that fat macro being higher is not working for you. So just because it's what you want doesn't always mean that it's what works. Sometimes you have to, you know, sort of figure out the balance of what works. And little people in the background, what works for your mind and your body, and kind of try to come to a compromise there. The one thing I do find is that protein macro does always need to be that top macro. So it does need to be, when you're in your loss phase, you do need to have that protein macro to be the highest one. I see a lot of people that will say, well, you know, that's great that that protein macro has to be the highest one, but I actually have a really hard time getting to 40%. So I'm just going to lower it to 30, and I'm going to do, you know, 30% protein and then 35% carbs and 35% fat. And that just feels a lot better to me. Well, that's great if it feels better to you, but keep in mind why that protein macro had to be high is to protect that bone density, to protect the, you know, your hair and your skin, to protect your muscle mass, to do all of those different things. So if you lower that protein macro, you're risking those things. So you just want to be very, very cautious with that, and try to avoid lowering that protein macro too much when you're in your loss phase. Now, when you hit maintenance, mixing up those macros. If you hit a stall, a real true stall that you've been stalled for a significant amount of time, that's when we, and I mean significant, like, you know, a month or 2 months where you haven't lost any weight in a month or 2 months, a long time. Not that you're losing slowly, but that you're literally not losing. You could, again, look at mixing up your macros and changing things around. Often I find that it's not a macro issue, but a calorie issue, that your calorie level tends to be the wrong one. But if you're really truly convinced that it's a macro issue, you could look at switching up your macros. That's the thing with macros, is that you can constantly change them around. It is something that I do with my one-on-one nutrition coaching clients, that we talk macros a lot. And often we will decide, you know, is it something that we need to change in your calories? Is it something we need to change in your macros? Do we want to look at something like carb cycling, which is a lot more in depth, where you're, you know, having high carb days and low carb days, to try to make the best of fueling your body that way? So there's all kinds of different things that we can do. We do talk about macros a fair bit in our Your Bariatric Transformation Academy as well. And we really try to help our members find a good macro balance there, and some accountability when it comes to that as well. So if you need more support with your macros, if you're like, my head is spinning, Christina, and I have no idea, you can definitely reach out to me. We can do some one-on-one nutrition coaching, or you can come on over into our Your Bariatric Transformation Academy and work with our members there and try to find the correct macro balance for you. All right. If you guys have any more macro questions, please feel free to put them in the comments here. I will come back and check on them later, but thank you for joining me and letting me talk about one of my favorite things ever. And hopefully you learned something here. Even those of you that have heard my macro spiel 9,000 times, hopefully something else stuck out to you today and you're like, oh, okay, finally, I understand that. Or maybe not. Maybe you're just like, I'm so over listening to macros, and I don't want the math, and it confuses me. So yeah, that is it, guys. And did I have any other? Hold on, let's just make sure. No, everything covered, done. 40% protein, 35% carbs, 25% fat. That's what you need to know. More information, send me a message. We can set up some one-on-one coaching, or join us over in Your Bariatric Transformation Academy. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, guys, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye.